Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. Maple is known as the taste of Vermont. Every gallon, pint, and ounce of maple syrup receives a grade. Grading syrup is the responsibility of the sugar maker. Sugar makers are the front line, ensuring that Vermont maple lives up to the high standards that consumers expect. In order to properly grade syrup, the product has to be tasted. It's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it. And to learn how to do it correctly, there's a maple grading school. Keith Silva has the story.
As summer greens give way to autumn golds, sugar makers gather at the Proctor Maple Research Center to learn how maple syrup makes the grade.
Dear God.
Or not.
It's easy to know what bad tastes like. It's hard to explain why. Yeah.
During the summer and fall, the International Maple Syrup Institute, a nonprofit organization representing all facets of the maple industry, funds maple grading schools across North America. Grade A pure maple syrup must fit within the standards for color, clarity, density, and flavor. The grader then determines which grade the syrup receives. Golden, which has a delicate taste, amber, a rich taste, dark, a robust taste, and very dark, which has a strong taste. The school teaches how to discern differences in these criteria and classifications. Also as important is how to tell when the taste is off.
We all have different sensitivities.
Mark Isselhart is UVM Extension's maple specialist.
Have you tasted bad syrup before?
Sure, yeah, it happens all the time. I've even made some bad syrup, so it does happen, and that's okay. You know, the thing not to do is ignore it. The thing is to identify that there's an issue and try to figure out what has gone wrong. Sometimes it can be really hard to figure out. I know it's not right, but I just don't know why. That's you know, part of what we do is to try to help answer that question.
Environmental factors and production practices impact the grade of maple syrup. Ultimately, it's the responsibility of the maple producer to ensure off-flavor syrup never reaches the consumer.
Now, I don't have a very good palate, you know. I either like it or I don't. That's about as far as my palate goes.
Dale and Melanie Miller drove 8 hours from north central Pennsylvania to attend the grading school. They run a 7,000 tap operation on 550 acres. For Dale, this school is about gaining an advantage.
I'm always looking for an edge. I mean, I come from an area that's very highly competitive. There's probably 6 or 8 producers in our area. We enter all the contests and we do all that stuff, you know, and trying to do that. And so, you know, I'm looking for that edge that I can have, that I can, you know, detect the flavors, or maybe, yeah, it's all good. It's interesting to taste the different flavors and maybe detect what caused them. Maybe it's something that you can change to do that. Obviously, some of the stuff that happens naturally, you know, the buddy syrup and different things, is not something you can do anything about it except maybe quit.
Tucker Diego works in the Consumer Protection and Food Safety Division at the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. Part of his job is investigating concerns from consumers and sugar makers when something doesn't taste quite right.
The unique thing about maple is that grading involves the flavor component. So there's no way to test the flavor, you have to taste it. So part of my work, and this is where the training comes in, is being able to develop my skills at picking out those flavors, those off flavors, so that I can you know, more accurately grade those products when I'm out doing a retail store inspection.
For Diego, detecting the subtleties of maple syrup means developing a taste for it.
A lot of the times you know immediately there's something wrong with the sample, but knowing how to describe what you're tasting is hard. There's kind of a whole language that goes with it, and so that's why tasting as a group is really helpful. You know, it doesn't always hit you immediately. It can kind of linger on your tongue or on the roof of your mouth, and that's something that, you know, this training is really helpful to practice that. So there's a lot of things that we need to know how to pick up, but at the end of the day, it's fairly straightforward to tell that there's something wrong in this sample.
Grading maple syrup is the last stop in a long process. And if it's done well, the results are all the sweeter for the sugar maker.
There's too much work involved in making pure maple syrup. Everything from carefully growing and making sure you have a healthy forest to the hard work of installing tubing, tapping, all of that before you even get into the sugar house. Once you get into the sugar house, there's all the work of making of this luxury food product. It would be a real shame to lose value by just not identifying when they're off flavors or having some part of the process be done incorrectly.
For these sugar makers and maple industry pros, scoring a spot at the Maple Grading School guarantees many sweet returns. In Underhill, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
The UVM Extension Maple Program provides research-based information to producers and anyone interested in pure maple syrup. For more information, go to the website uvm.edu/extension/agriculture/maple. Maple producers also need to know a lot about the forest. Forests are wonderfully complex ecosystems that provide benefits like clean water and air, along with diverse wildlife and plant habitat. So it's not surprising that 2 Vermont colleges are working together to provide students with a comprehensive forestry education. Let's rejoin Keith for more on that.
It doesn't get much more hands-on than this. Bring a pen and paper, sure, but don't forget your axe, chainsaw, and ear protection, because it gets loud. Graham Leitner is the instructor for timber harvesting at Vermont Tech.
In timber harvesting, we start out with basics of forest management and silviculture, and then we're teaching the students on how to go out in the woods and evaluate a woodland for the potential of timber harvesting, and then we're doing quite a bit of work with logging safety and finishing up the semester with water quality and some forest mapping.
You look up and identify hazards.
Leitner has brought in Dave Birdsall from Northeast Woodland Training to teach the game of logging, a world-recognized training curriculum for chainsaw skills. This is Kristen Skoda's first college course, one first of many for this 19-year-old.
It was the first time I ever used a chainsaw. Was what I expected it to be like. It's a little intimidating, but not bad.
Besides how to safely use a chainsaw, Skoda is also learning how much work goes into working the woods.
The different harvesting systems are really cool, how many different ways you can get wood out of the forest and how much more goes into it than just cutting down a tree and getting some boards out of it. How much more goes into managing the forest, like for wildlife and just for recreational use. That's something I've found really interesting.
Nothing quite like the smell of the gas when you rev up the engine.
Charlie Young sees timber harvesting as more than a college course. It's a way of life.
When I get older, I want a large piece of land and property for myself, and I'm going to need firewood if I have a wood stove or something, and also land management. So using this, I can effectively or more effectively take care of my future, I guess.
The forestry major at Vermont Tech is a 2-year degree. While this fulfills a requirement to get a Vermont forestry license and is ideal for some students, administrators wanted to go further, so they reached out to another state school.
We designed this Associates in Forestry degree in collaboration with UVM.
Molly Willard manages Vermont Tech's Institute for Applied Agriculture and Food Systems.
Students could do their first 2 years here, and then they can either walk away with a technical associate's degree in forestry, or they can go on seamlessly to UVM into their junior year to acquire a Bachelor's of Science in Forestry.
This developing partnership between UVM and Vermont Tech is a win-win for students and educators.
It's nice for VTC and UVM to collaborate on educational curriculums like this, because I think both institutions bring a different set of expertise. So VTC really focuses on applied, tangible, technical education, and so our timber harvesting course very much is focused on that. And then to go on to UVM, they're able to be really introduced to more faculty, a wider breadth of knowledge in terms of forest ecology, and then also research.
When he's not teaching, Leitner owns and operates Vermont Greenwood, a logging and timber harvesting business focused on sustainable forestry. He hires employees whose people skills match their knowledge of forestry.
90% of my employees have actually been formally trained in forestry, and I believe that timber harvesting in the modern world on smaller ownerships, small private woodlands owned by predominantly working families, really requires a greater level of expertise to be able to manage personal relationships on your job sites, to be able to do sustainable work in the woods, and to just make forestry a more well-respected and sustainable profession.
Very, very nice.
Felling trees requires concentration, patience, and tenacity. Skills Skoda and Young know they'll need to continue their education and build a career.
Thought about careers a lot, but as far as this, it's absolutely crucial if you want to advance your position, and especially being a forester or logger. Obviously, this program is set up so that you get hands-on experience, so that when you eventually go into the workforce, you're not just standing out there with your head spinning around. You know what to do and how to do it, and it just makes you more prepared for entering the workforce.
What do you think?
I really like steps, so that okay, when I'm doing this, this is what I have to remember. Right now, I'm kind of focusing on the hands-on stuff, but I have been thinking about different careers to go with forestry, and maybe just this class, where I could take it.
Thanks to Vermont Tech and UVM, the next step for these students is sure to make them a cut above. In Randolph Center, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Our thanks to the students at VTC, and once again, thank you for joining us Across the Fence. I'm Fran Stoddard.